Okay, this is part 2 of my introduction. We're going to try to get this ironed out a little bit. My equipment's junk. I don't even really have a working computer. And once again, I am a refugee. I've made my plea for asylum from the President of Mexico because we need to rebuild journalism from a place that we at least have the backing of the government and police. You know, the anarchists being against us, the other party being against us, other violent troublemakers being against us is one thing. But when our own U.S. law enforcement won't support us, when we don't have any more right to self-defense, when our right to even keep and bear firearms, our inalienable right to keep and bear firearms, is being repeatedly infringed to a greater and greater degree, and God forbid you ever use one in self-defense, because it's years to prove yourself innocent. It's not like the old days where the sheriff stands in the street, 2-3 witnesses step forward and say, "I seen it all, was a fair fight," or "this feller shot first and he defended himself." That's it. No charges, done deal. The sheriff or the marshal or the town LEO sees that in the old days and it's over. But today it's very different. You got to have insurance, and the first thing that they're going to restrict is your right to travel, which makes you a sitting duck. Then the anarchists can just come burn your house down with you in it, like we've seen again and again and again and again. So we've got violent anarchists, we've got the militarization of the alphabet soup, all our agencies, which have been, there's been a creep to them becoming more corrupt, more protecting of the pedophiles, more troublesome. And as that has happened, what's a guy to do? What is a journalist to do? Well, a lot of people just keep their head low, and I was a very good gray man for a lot of years, but when Trump got in office, the Lord spoke to me that it was time for me to teach publicly. And so that was me stretching my neck across the chopping block, and I've done a really good job, I guess, of running and gunning for 4 years, really with very little aid or comfort. But right now, I'm to the point where I've had to request assistance from the citizen president. And really, he is the protector of the political dissidents and the refugees of the world, or at least of our hemisphere. And I'm not talking about people who come in from El Salvador and say, "Oh, there is no opportunity and I'm afraid there are gangsters on my block." I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about targeted individuals. The president of Mexico is the protector of all real dissidents. And so I am one. My claim is up on Twitter. You're welcome to read it. It's dated June 30th. So just find my feed at Honald Samuel and go down to June 30th. And right there's my claim. It's all in Spanish, but even an English-speaking person, when you look at it, there's a lot of things that you'll recognize. So there's a multitude of reasons that I'm here and that I've made that plea. But what I was asked about today is about this new thing that I've set forth. And so let's see how long my camera makes it here. If I have to go to a third or fourth video, I will. But we were talking about the huge military buildup in the South China Sea and the larger Indian Ocean. You know, India is part of this. India is the nation that's most likely to have to defend itself against China any given day. They have troops right on the border. In Taiwan, at least, they have to sail 90 miles to get to Taiwan. But in India, they're right on the border, heavily militarized, 2 nuclear powers. So there's a lot of nations that are aligned and that are determined to confront China as the world's bully. And right now what's happening is something that's could be a fulfillment of these ancient prophecies that have always just stymied and mystified those who looked into them. And I am going to deviate from some of the teaching that was out there in the 80s that has persisted to today. A lot of that was, first of all, we see in part and we prophesy in part. Second, a lot of that was colored by the menace of the day of the Soviet Union. And when the Lord pulled the plug and that bathwater went down the drain, that kind of wasn't the overarching world dilemma anymore. And really, the state of globalism was ready to take over in 1980. It was only that Reagan got elected by a miracle, and that there was a little bump of a revival. It was not a super revival. It was a little weakling revival, but it bumped along for a few years, and it was enough. It was enough for God to turn our enemies away and to turn them upon one another, every man's sword against his brother. You know, the Soviet republics broke up from the Soviet Union, and a lot of them started to fight. And so that really gave the world some peace. But globalism was so advanced in 1980, all the technology was there for the mark of the beast. Now it's a lot bigger and badder. It's come back worse. But in 1980, all it took was a 16-digit card and magnetic readable ink, and boom, you can tattoo a person's hand or their forehead and control all financial transactions. Visa and MasterCard and the electronic payment transfer systems were advanced to the point every person's name was already in the computer called the Beast in Brussels, Belgium, and it was ready to be rolled out. If only our nation had not turned back to God a little bit, and if only Ronald Reagan had not gotten elected, then the Antichrist system really could have advanced then. Well, it didn't. So a lot of times passed by, and now it's time to really look at our eschatology again and anew. And I am a sacred cow tipper. If you follow my verse of the day at all, especially the first 100 lessons, which are on YouTube. Also, I have a backup channel on BitChute. And I kind of play nice on YouTube and on Twitter. I'm very careful. There are other channels like Subscribestar, like Dave Hodges, the Common Sense Show.tv, where I frequently guest, where we can really just go no holds barred. But we have to kind of play nice here because, you know, everything is run through the AI. And I really don't want to get the plug pulled. I don't need that. I'm trying not to provoke conflict. It's easy enough for me to start a riot. Started enough of them in enough cities just with the gospel of Jesus Christ. I really don't need to be doing that intentionally unless I'm really specifically led. So some of these prophecies we're going to look at again, and I hope that's okay. If anybody's wedded to their doctrine where the word's not alive to them anymore, that's a problem. So I hope that we can look at it anew. And as far as these horns being torn out, this is something that even in the 80s I did not hear teaching on who and what. Just everybody knew that there were 10 kings and that 3 of them would be uprooted. So let's go to Daniel and let's go to Revelation, and we'll talk about these verses and the background for the actual physics, the actual military buildup. It's on my Subscribestar, subscribestar.com/gospelgunslingers, and then it's free to look at those articles. I appreciate everybody who subscribes, everybody who donates, because not only am I'm a refugee, I am a refugee. Thank you. The information's free, though. Here we go. Daniel, the 8th chapter. And I'm going to back up just a little bit where we talk about the little horn. And maybe we'll step aside and go to the beasts themselves. So let's start in 8:9. Let's start in 8:8. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. Okay, so this is talking about global empires of the day. It's talking about the global empire of the Medes and Persians, and Daniel parallels this in several ways. Early on, Daniel sees an image, and he says, in the head, thou, O Nebuchadnezzar, O king of Babylon, art this head of gold. So the head and shoulders were of gold, and then the chest and arms were of silver, and then below was brass, the belly was of brass, and the legs were of iron. And then the feet were the famous feet of clay. Please read the whole book of Daniel in King James. It'll give you a great understanding of history and the future. So that's where we get to talk about the feet of clay. And the fourth empire is the legs of iron, a dual kingdom that was a political power and was also a religion. That's why we see an attempt early on in the book of Daniel where the king made the image 90 feet high and commanded everyone to worship it. He had seen that the Jews were not only a political kingdom, but they also were a religion. And if that's the case, even if the political kingdom is broken down, then the religion stands. And he saw that this was what made Israel so strong. Nebuchadnezzar first carried away many captives, then went in and crushed the capital city of Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, stopped the worship in the temple, and then carried away the people captive brutally, naked and pierced. They were pierced in their face. So they didn't just have a leash or a collar like you see some slaves with. They were pierced and strung like fish on a stringer so that when that chain was pulled, they would come quickly, not get their face ripped. Nebuchadnezzar did all that, and yet this culture persisted. Their language persisted. Their worship persisted. And he'd never seen that in all the nations that he'd conquered. And so eliminating that this is the true God, the maker of heaven and earth, he saw that it was political and it was a religion. So in his kingdom, they decided to split into a political and a religious kingdom with the idol. Of course, that didn't work out because old Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got thrown into the fiery furnace for refusal to worship. So they stuck to their worship of the one true God, refused to worship an idol, and they got thrown into the fiery furnace. And when they came out, Nebuchadnezzar was amazed, and he commanded that their God was the high God, and that there would be a penalty for anyone who insulted their God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, see, the split did not happen until the fourth kingdom, the Roman kingdom. And that's where you see the legs of iron. That's where you see the legs of iron. Rome succeeded in making a dual kingdom. And we see that today. And there's two real conspiracy theories that are plausible. One is that it's the Jew who always has faithfulness to Jerusalem. In my observation, Jewish Americans have been very good Americans for the most part. They still have the sin nature in them, and that's fallible. But I think that they've done well and been good Americans. Conversely, anyone who's a member of the Church of Rome, they have a spy network that's second to none in the world, an incredible spy network. The confessional is one of the keys of that. Anything that's said in the confessional that has to do with revolution or empires or political affairs or spycraft, it will be in Rome within the hour. Yes, it will. And so I observe, and I see the Bible saying, that the dual kingdom of today is the Roman kingdom of the world. They have their political empire, and then they have their religious empire. And even when the Jesuit order, for example, has been evicted out of 50 nations, it was a 100-year series of revolutions. It wasn't complete until the Spanish-American War to really get the Spanish out of the New World. And even so, many remained, and many clergy in the Roman Church remained. And so this is a good example where their natural kingdom was crushed, but the religious side stayed. And you've still got the priests and nuns and the monks, and they're still collecting information, and they're still trying to control education. They're still proselytizing and trying to build up that, always to the point where they can get this up. And when they finally do, worldwide, this is the rise of Antichrist. And William Branham was very clear that the last pope will be the Antichrist. So that's a little bit of background. Then we see these same four kingdoms in four beasts. And the legs of iron become the fourth and terrible beast. And the fourth and terrible beast, let me just read you about it. Verse, no, I'm going to go back. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit. This is 7:15. In the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. In Daniel 7, this happens 4 times, and I've preached on each of these verses in my 3-minute lessons of the Gospel Gunslingers, verse of the day for Gospel Gunslingers. Some of the early ones are 4, 5, 6 minutes. Today it's on Telegram. Just search Gospel Gunslingers. Every day there's a new verse of the day for Gospel Gunslingers. But here in Daniel 7, 3 times the saints take the kingdom. Judgment is given to the saints. And so I really ask you to go back and watch those early lessons, because I don't really retread all that ground, where I establish the right of Christian believers to use force, to be politically active, to get things done, and to take the kingdom. It says right here, the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom. 19. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell. That's verse 20, 7th chapter, Daniel's prophecy. So that's the 3 horns torn out. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Verse 21. So this is Antichrist, and this has been reliably taught for years, that the little horn that blasphemes is the Antichrist. 21. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. So that's a frightful verse, and we need to remember that it's there. There's a great book by Evan Roberts with Penn Lewis is his lady co-author, Jesse Penn Lewis, and it's called War on the Saints, which is this quotation from an English British Bible. And he tells about how the enemy assailed the great Welsh revival of 1904, of which Evan Roberts was the principal, and how they came against it. And he takes the title from this verse. They had a great revival, but he just comes out and says, look, it's written that the Antichrist will make war on the saints and will overcome them. So he tells, and it's really worth reading, because if you ever get a revival going, I'll tell you right now, the same tricks are going to be used against you to bring it all down. If you know their tricks and you're not ignorant of the devil's devices, then you can really stand against that. And this is what the Gospel Gunslingers is about. Standing against, not being victimized, not being taken down, not being crushed, standing and fighting for as long as we can. We have to contend for the faith earnestly. Made war on the saints and prevailed against them. 22, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So this is again, who possesses the kingdom? The saints. They don't get adiosed out into the ether, and then come back, and then go up, and then come down. No, all right, I'm not going to make fun, but we need to lay the plumb line of some right doctrine. Judgment was given to the saints. Now our forefathers founded this country and said we had an inalienable right to judge our own matters and to cut off from our communities, according to prescribed penalties, the offenders that break the laws that we make. Now it's a juggernaut that makes laws, and the law itself is a library. But this is an inalienable right for judgment to be in our community and the righteous of the community running it. Let's go on. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. All right, this is Rome. You know, there's a whole 1,000-year dark ages where the kingdom of Rome ruled the world. All the kings knew that they ruled because the Pope said that they could rule. This is where the idea of divine right comes from, which our forefathers were against. Not that there shouldn't be a king, but that the king is chosen by the Pope. A lot of them were real weirdos. You don't have to dig very deep to find that. And then after that 1,000-year dark age, what happens? 1517, the protest. And then the Renaissance. Art begins to develop. Science begins to develop. All because people rediscovered the true and simplistic faith of their own Bibles and reading it. Judgment being given to the saints. And they realized their right to stand up, get their bows and arrows out and their hoes and their pitchforks or whatever they had to defend themselves if marauding armies came in to try to make them subject and subdue them. Let's go on. The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. 24. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. Okay, so a lot of people say political leaders. A lot of people say that could be a president, it could be a prime minister. Maybe. I'm not going to argue that. But it says kings, and I just want to... The whole purpose of this video is that 3 centuries-old dynasties are standing up against the Leviathan, against the dragon right now. So we're going to see how that goes. But they've sent their warships right in his face. We'll see what happens. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, another horn. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. So right there it is. There's a fight between the Antichrist that hasn't fully exposed himself in his final human form. Now there are many Antichrists, and the spirit of Antichrist is already at work. Thessalonians is very clear. But as he's trying to rise, 3 kings fight him. All right. Another, this is the middle of verse 24, another horn shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. It's another thing. There's a constant battle to wear out the saints. If you're a saint, they try to wear you out all the time. But you know what? If you persist in faith, and if you stand and fight, then your youth will be renewed like the eagle. Abraham was pretty wore out. He got a whole other lease on life, lived another 75 years, had that family, and then when his wife died, went found a pretty girl, had a whole other family, then waited for the kids to grow up, gave them all gifts, sent them away from his son Isaac, and then when he was old, he died, 175 years old. But the Antichrist is always trying to wear down the saints. Let's continue. And think to change times and laws. You know what calendar we use? What day is today? The day of the week? The month of the year? They're all from Pope Gregory. It's from the popes. It's from the spirit of Antichrist and those predecessor Antichrists. They've changed times and laws. They get us to worship on Sunday and not on the day that the Lord himself rested and sanctified. And they've got their little reasons why, but I'll tell you what, and I'm sorry if you're steeped in that doctrine, you maybe ought to look at it again. That what changed solemnity was Antichrist, because he said, this is the day of the sun. I live among the people of the sun. Right there's the sun giving me backlight. He shall think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand, until a time and times and the dividing of time. So there's half of 7 years. I'm going to teach a whole other message on Daniel's 70th week because Brother Clayton Sonmore taught me some things about the 70th week that I'm going to tell you. Everybody's 80s Larkin chart doctrine is not going to cut it. It's already fallen apart. And here again, please, let's look at the Word and not on doctrines of men that people pull out, and it's processed, and it's chopped and pressed, and parts is parts, they used to say, of the soggy chicken McNuggets. And I feel like that's what's been done to the Word, and we have to desire the real meat of the Word. So let's look at it again, but another time we're going to look at Daniel's 70th week. And I'm going to broadcast more on here. Please stay with me. Please hit the bell if you're not. And if you can't get it or if it gets removed, go over to BitChute. Please subscribe there too. Please follow me on all channels. I really need that because I'm a one-man operation, okay? I don't have 10 social media directors out there tweeting kitty photos to ramp up the followers. I need individual people to help me to get the word out. So please do that. Thank you. All right. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and destroy it unto the end. So the fourth and terrible beast is confronted by the saints. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. How about that? The revolutionaries win, and not for their little country, for the whole world. And this is the stone that's cut without hands, that strikes the feet of clay and enlarges and becomes the whole world. So the stone is the Lord Jesus, but then his holy temple rises up with living stones. And you can be part of that. And those saints, I'm just going to read this verse again. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. All right. So let's go back to chapter 7, where it talks about the four beasts. I was on a radio call-in show. I hitchhike a lot on Hal Turner with Alex. Dave Hodges has been very good to me and given me a platform to really get a lot of things out there. I appreciate everybody that's helped me to do that. What it means, though, is that I got this broadcast here and that one there. If you really don't dig around and find them all, there are going to be some holes. And once I discharge something out of my spirit, I really don't want to go up and try to dig out the book and do it all again. That takes a great deal of effort for me, and I've already gone on. That's the showbread. It's fed on to the priests, and then you got fresh showbread on the altar for the next day. Okay, and think about that when you gotta. I really don't like these verses of the day books. I really don't like them because we need hot bread every day. We need the word of the Lord. However, in mine, I've laid the foundation for numerous doctrines, and I've done it for those that are challenged in their attention span. So you could sit down and watch the whole first 30 lessons in the time that you could watch one movie, something a lot of people do every single day. You could watch all 30 of the original foundational verses of the day for gospel gunslingers. The playlist is right here on YouTube. But they're really designed to be a meditation through the day, to be a study, and where there is one verse of the day, but a lot of times I'll read several, and I'll go to this book, and I'll go to that book, and I'll go to the prophets, and I'll go to Genesis, and I'll go to the words of Jesus, and I'll go to the letters, whatever. I'll go a lot of places to lay the doctrine as a master builder. And so please get your King James Bible. If you don't have a paper King James Bible, please put that on your list to get today. That's something I say in the very first lesson, the verse of the day for gospel gunslingers. And then follow through. Mark those verses. Make a note. Make a notepad. Heck, write a book, and we'll publish it together. Why has nobody done that? I don't know, but there's a great deep history of doctrines for those who believe in self-defense and self-government. Okay, so this fourth and terrible beast. I was on the radio show. I digress. I was on the radio show, and I was waiting on hold to broadcast, and somebody said, I read in Daniel I read in Daniel, and there's a bear, and the bear had 3 ribs in its mouth. Yeah. And they were like comparing that to something that was happening today. Just crack open Matthew Henry's commentary, written in 1700 to 1706, where he discusses how all of that was fulfilled in antiquity, and the fourth and terrible beast arose in its predecessor form under Alexander, who was the original horn, who was displaced by 4 horns. So this is 400 BC, and then before that was this other kingdom with the bear. So for somebody to be like, I'm seeing this today, they're missing the point. On one hand, I'm glad people are opening the Bible at all. On the other hand, this is deep waters. You know, we're not the Proverbs where it says, be nice to your mom. This is prophecy. All right. So we're just going to talk about the fourth beast right now. 7:7, Daniel. And after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And then this is a verse that I read on the air. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. I beheld till thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. So the Lord God Almighty comes. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. So this is Antichrist boasting against the Ancient of Days. I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. So, if we're disturbed by the power of this fourth and terrible beast, as Daniel was, just remember that the Ancient of Days came. He shows Jesus as Christ, and that Son of Man is going to have an everlasting dominion. The government will be on his shoulders. 15, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me know the interpretation of the things. Thank God for his ministering angels. And then the angel starts telling, these great beasts which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Okay, so this is the great beast. This is the 10 horns are part of the beast. The 10 horns are 10 kings, and 3 of them stand up against the Antichrist. They stand up against the Antichrist, and the Antichrist has to uproot them for his horn to arise. So let's pop over to Revelation. We're just going to go right on. Hey, I got my ribbon in there. You know they only give you about 3 minutes. Old Harrison, he knows not to call on me at the beginning of a segment because I'll preach nonstop until the very end, and the music plays and the hard break comes in. So he let a couple people in before me, and then when it was done, you only got 1, 2, 3 minutes when you're hijacking somebody else's program. So I really ran through this quickly. Revelation 17. Now here again, this talks about Mystery Babylon, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. This is just very beautiful, 17 and 18, which talks about the judgment of Babylon, which William Branham said the city of Rome will be destroyed by a nuclear device, a Russian nuclear device. So we can look forward to that. Those are a couple of his final prophecies, or the few that are unfulfilled, that he stood by through his life. A Russian nuclear device will destroy the city of Rome. Now, if you are a Christian, the founder of your denomination or your church movement believed that the popes, the papacy, is the seat of Antichrist. They believe that. Look it up. We've diverted. We have digressed. We have regressed from that basic doctrine. And a lot of people look at this and they're like, oh, I wondered if the woman, oh, there's a whore? Who could that be? Maybe it's Hillary. Here again, I'm glad people are opening the Bible at all. But throughout the centuries, all of the greats concur that this is the papacy. Now I'm in Latin America, which was subject to a brutal conquest. I understand that someone who's in the United States of America, you don't ever see the Roman Church as the tiger. You see it as a little lamb. Oh, they have nuns, and they're so nice, and they help the poor. Guess who's trafficking in the kids? Guess who's handing over the kids to pedophiles? Catholic Charities. Now it's out in the open. Now, I could have told you that 20 years ago because the insurrection movements in Mexico were run by the Catholic Church. All right, so there is a whore. And she rides the beast. Let's look at this. Revelation 17. And I didn't start this with a whole book full of notes. Just somebody asked me to expound on this a little bit. So let's go. And I intended to do this live. I have the subscribers now, and I'm going to start doing live streams. Please hit the bell if you don't have the bell. And then when I come on live, you can comment. I'll even take questions. It'll be a lot of fun. And then we'll archive that for future use. 17:3. 7 angels. So one of the angels comes and talks with the prophet. 17:3. So he, the angel, carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, so this woman is on a beast. And this is the unholy trinity. There's a woman, there's a beast. There's the beast and the false prophet. We'll talk also about the dragon. There's an unholy trinity. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, the 2 colors on the flag of the nation of Vatican City, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. This gets interesting. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. Here again, thank you, God, for sending your angel to make these things clear to us. Even the prophet Daniel was very confused. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. This is one of the reasons why we see this as the literal Leviathan, because it was before, from creation. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Now Jerusalem also has 7 mountains, but this is the city of Rome, the 7 hills on which the woman sits. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. A lot going on. Sometimes there's gunshots too, just saying. Welcome to my life. All right. So the seventh king must continue a short space. And the beast that was, so that's the first 7 horns. And then there's the 8th horn that uproots 3 other horns. So here's 7, and here's 3. These 3 are uprooted, and then the Antichrist comes up as that 8th horn. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. All right, so this talks about the little horn uprooting 3 horns. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Now we're going to get into a whole other rebellion here, which is very important, because 2 different times the devil gives men in his kingdom, he gives them power and authority. And what do? The one time that he gives power to men and gives any democracy, I mean, that's only just one level. What do? They turn to God and they rebel against him. All right, so let's continue. So here we have exactly the same thing that we saw in Daniel. There's 10 horns, 7 of them stay, 3 are ripped out, and the 8th horn comes up, and that one is the Antichrist. He is of the 8th. He is the 8th and is of the 7 and goeth into perdition. Okay. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet. So this was written, many centuries before Christ, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So all these dynasties that we see as being ancient dynasties, in England, for example, going back to the 10th century, and then written accounts before even that. In Japan, I don't even know how long the House of the Chrysanthemum has been there, but it's very ancient. But yet, this was written way before, and it says that these are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but will receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Okay. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. All right, so our friend Alex, for example, is really hard on the Church of England and the Queen Elizabeth and the House of Windsor and even the Dutch royalty. You know who owns Royal Dutch Shell, which is like the mega oil corporation of the world, is Queen Elizabeth and the House of the Royal House of the Netherlands, which is one of these 3 that are sending ships right in China's face with missiles, ready to go set some things straight. Okay, so it says right here that they give their power, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Okay, so they've been part of the Antichrist system. Yes, Queen Elizabeth, who's on the throne right now. But what then happens? I'm going to skip ahead. And the 10 horns, verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So the likelihood of the city of Rome getting nuked is very high, because when all 10 of these kings, the majority, if not all of them in Europe, give their authority and they say to Vlad, look, the city of Rome is oppressing you, trying to fight you, and trying to fight all of us. And so we will stand back if you blow it off the map. Well, Vlad just might do that. Vladimir Putin. He might just do that because he knows where the heart of globalism really is. It's not even in China, because China was built by the papacy with a lot of muscle and financial power from corrupt elements of the U.S. government that were in cahoots with these 10 kings. This is globalism. They built this China to be their bully. All right, so let's just look at that quickly again. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Yeah, Rome ruled over all the kings of the earth, until the first Protestant king of England stood up and said, no, I'm the head of my army. I'm going to make a church for my nation. You're not going to be the head of it over there. We're smarter than that. And then many came after. That was just the inception. And it was a rough cut. But you know what? This is the dawn of self-government. This is the dawn of inalienable rights for the average human, and let alone a king. Why should a king be subject to a foreign power? So there you have the 10 kings. They give their power as kings 1 hour with the beast. They have one mind. They give their power and strength to the beast. And then they hate the whore and make her desolate and naked. And this is what happens in Daniel, is the beast is burned with fire. All right. So let's talk about the actual fulfillment of this. Now that we've looked at the word just briefly. And please get on and follow the links. Read what I've laid down just very clearly and written out on my blog and other places. There's an enormous military buildup. And it's not just 3 nations. South Korea's in on it, Taiwan's in on it, massive India with the better part of 2 billion people is in on it, and hundreds of nuclear warheads and very advanced jets, and one aircraft carrier that's been in service for years, and a brand new one that's on schedule to be out, and they've been very hush-hush about it. It may be ready to rumble. It may be a fully operational battle station. And you know what they're buying? F-18, FA-18. Carrier-based Generation 4 Plus U.S. attack planes. And as we transition to the F-35, we've got a lot of those F-18s around. It passed the ski jump test just in December, January, which meant that the way was cleared for the Indian Navy to pick up those F-18s. They've been running MiGs for years, which is a very capable Generation 4 or beyond aircraft, but the F-18 is more modern and better, and it's a Western build. They have all kinds of jets, though. They have European jets. They have Mirage made in France. They have all kinds of cool stuff. It's a great power. Okay, so there's also Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. So again, outside of these 3 kings, we have South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, and India. Now, India was a British colony and is a member of the Commonwealth today, but she's not the head of state. The Queen Elizabeth, at 95 years of age, is the head of state in Canada. She can fire Trudeau anytime she wants. She just appointed a brand new Governor General, Mary Simon, yesterday. She's the head. She's the Commander-in-Chief of the Canadian military. Now, we're going to talk about that because I made a stunning statement about what she may do, as William of Orange did. But Canada, New Zealand, and Australia are Commonwealth nations. So is Singapore. Now, Singapore is at the end of the Malay Peninsula and right there guarding the Straits of Malacca, a strategic strait, probably the most important strategic strait in the world, right there with the Panama Canal, the Cape of Good Hope, and the Cape Horn. Except this one, other than the Panama Canal and Gibraltar, is the tightest. If a ship cannot transit the Straits of Malacca, then it has to go 8,000 miles around. 8,000 miles. So the Straits of Malacca are very important, and what's right there on the tip of the Malay Peninsula is Singapore. Now, it's an island. It's cut off from the peninsula. It's an island nation, and they own some other islands too. It's a very sophisticated and technologically advanced nation. It's full of skyscrapers, but we're talking like it's 200 or 300 square miles. So if you live in a city of 1 million people, your city is bigger than all of Singapore, this nation, which is in Asia and has to defend itself from all these Asian foreign powers. So the Queen, or really the government, even when Boris was involved in some of this, and their secretaries of defense and such, they said, we will militarize Singapore. We're going to base our Queen Elizabeth carrier in Singapore. That was their first statement to China that, hey, we're coming over to your side of the world and we're going to police it. And if you start trouble, we'll be ready to duke up and rumble. So this was before the Queen Elizabeth carrier was even built, was even in sea trials or whatever. They said, we're going to dock it at Singapore. So I tweeted it. Somebody else on Twitter found a satellite photo, somebody I follow, and said, hey, the Queen Elizabeth carrier is transiting the Straits of Malacca. They didn't tell the whole world that, because that's a strategic point where they're very vulnerable. You know, what if somebody had 20 land-based silkworm missiles on the Malay Peninsula and on the other side on the islands and just launched them all? That'd be a very dangerous place. But I went ahead and tweeted out that great ship was transiting the Straits of Malacca, and the Queen was making good on her promise to militarize Singapore. Okay, so today's Tuesday as I record this.